You're listening to the Flex Success podcast, where we teach you how to be less shit.
I'm your co-host Lizzie, and this is Dean. We'll be covering all topics relating to health, fitness, and bodybuilding.
Join us as we use our in the trenches experience and up-to-date science to provide you with information that you can actually use.
If you like what we do, be sure to give us a like, follow, share, and tag us on social media.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Flex Success podcast. You are joined by myself, Coach Dean, and Coach George, mate. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, man. I finally caught up on myself. I don't feel as jet lagged anymore. Just getting back into a bit of normal routine. The travel was a pain getting to the States, man. I was in customs for so long.
Not only that, you were living in the UK, working on Australian time zone, and then you've changed that and shifted to America.
Yeah.
But George, mate, personal update quickly then. Why are you in America?
Because a couple of weeks back, Blake, my wheelchair bodybuilder, took his pro card at the Europa Pro, and then shortly after dominated the pro show, got his qualification for the Olympia. So we grabbed everything on that plane, and away we come. We're over here for the O, which is absolutely just kind of mind-blowing to say, to be honest, how quickly it all just kind of materialized and happened. There wasn't a second to really like take a minute and it all sink in. It was just all go, go, go. So yeah, we just, the minute we got here, sat down for 5 minutes and was just appreciative of the fact that we've actually got here to the biggest bodybuilding stage on the planet. It's crazy.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, I think Blake won last year in Australia, but wasn't granted a pro card because of numbers. That's correct?
Yeah. With amateur wheelchair bodybuilding, the competitive pool is always the problem, and trying to find different kind of venues and different places and branches of the IFBB in different parts of the world to actually host it. It's always a bit, doesn't really draw enough in. So it's very rare that they have shows. It's either like UK amateur qualify, India, or Australia. So like for people that have a lot of challenge traveling around, a lot more higher costs and expenses, it's kind of a bit like inconvenient for them having to travel around all the time. But yeah, last year, 2 on stage, so obviously needed to be 4 or more, I believe. Then I think they might have tweaked it. On the odd occasion, Tony has given out a pro card here or there, but I think there needs to be prior approval or like a conversation for that to happen, and just wasn't this time. But Paddy didn't, because of course he come back after a pretty epic off season with a very improved physique, man,
and Olympia contending worthy physique. That's the other thing too. You know, he's entering into the pro ranks with a pro card in already pro level. I mean, that of course because he won, so it's fucking mad.
Exactly. That's the best way you want it to happen, right? You don't want to get the pro card, then go and be bottom of the pack and realize, shit, there's a load of work to do now.
Yeah, no, there's it's an interesting one, because you should actually team up with Tracy Gill while she's there, because she was in a similar boat to Blake last year, right? She actually won the overalls, was told that she wouldn't get her pro card because there wasn't enough women in women's physique in Australia. And then because Bev Francis judged it, the IFBB basically gave her the go-ahead to give the pro card if she thought she was at the standard necessary to compete as a pro. Gets the pro card, surprise, surprise, rocks on over to Chicago, wins the first ever pro show, gets the ticket to the O, and here she is too. So her and Blake are like in the same sort of camp, man. It's pretty mad.
We've got such a cool little Aussie camp over here. I mean, Logan Robson's coming out as well.
Yep.
Tracy, I think there was another, I don't actually know her name, sadly, but she was at Europa Pro. There was a figure competitor, an Aussie figure competitor. She got the pro card, she got the pro qualified. She's over here as well. It's pretty mad. Good team of Aussies coming out to the Olympia, man, across all different federations, across different categories.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I'm glad you said it before, man, because I've said this even when I used to play football/soccer, whichever you want to call it, depending on where you are in the world. Many years ago when I was there over in the UK, like the quality that I used to play with in Oz was, on a pound for pound like percentage, was greater than what I experienced in the UK. But the opportunity was so much lower that the ability to like develop beyond being very good as like at an amateur level to then being the elite pro was so difficult for Aussies. And it's the same in bodybuilding, you know, because I mean, it's probably even harder considering availability of all of the things that they need and food and expense and getting to shows and all that kind of jazz. So.
Exactly, man. I said that to you when I first come out into the Aussie space with Flex. Like the quality of athletes I saw, even just being there in the flesh last year at Nationals, like the standard was a lot better. Maybe it's just the criteria of amount of people you have. So, you know, the cream always rising to the crop. There's just a lot more of them in number. But yeah, definitely, I've said it many times to my athletes, like if it's logistically possible to get over to the UK and do some shows, or in Europe, do it, because you'll probably surprise yourself. In my opinion, from the standard of what I saw, Aussie's a really, really cool place for sporting standard across all different things.
Yeah, I mean, there's dudes that would absolutely have spanked me in the Aussie season that I missed by being in Australia, and then I ended up winning the British one. So like, it's wild, man. And the guys that won this year for all of the pro cards, at least for the men that I saw, and I'm sure also in the women, the quality this year was unreal again. So let's do a little bit of a recap then, because we just had the IFBB Nationals just on the weekend just passed. Personal update for me, I've now since moved back to Spain, which is cool. I'm back in Valencia after having been in London for the last 3 months. So that's really fun. But I spent the whole month out in Australia. It was almost like the reverse of you. You did it last year. I did it this year. Maybe one year we'll team up together. Who knows?
Right. I wish I had. I wish I had, man. It was just poor timing, and I was like, I can't really justify that travel. Then I had to go to America. It was just like,
Yeah, and then you're back over this way again in Japan for a holiday, right, in December. So
yeah, it's all crazy.
and for
What
the
was it like?
people, George also got a house. Him and his lovely partner Zoe got a house. So congratulations, mate.
Like waiting for a bus, stay at the stop, and then all of a sudden, all 10 turn up at once.
What a month, mate. No wonder you're tired.
Shattered. How has it been back in Oz? It's the first time since you left, right?
Yeah, nearly 3 years. Man, it was really good. Interestingly, Sydney felt more like home than Gold Coast.
Okay.
I think I've come to realize that I really enjoy a city that has a little bit of age to it and a little bit of character and like seemingly like, that has more history to it. It's interesting. I mean, when I drove back into Sydney and I saw the old terrace homes and like I was in similar areas to what I, sort of where I'd met Liz and we'd lived, and I was like, this place is cool, man. The Gold Coast, I was like, this is really nice and like super relaxing and super chill, but it didn't have as much, I think, like Australian nostalgia to me, because the Gold Coast is the Gold Coast. It's a little bit like, it's not a facade by any means, but it's a little bit more like, surface level,
It's the Essex of Australia to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say it's the Jersey Shore of Oz, but with,
Exactly.
Yeah. So similar. A Geordie Shore, right? Is that Essex?
That's Newcastle, but it's
Okay.
the version, same kind of reality.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
But man, it was awesome to catch up with everybody. It was awesome to see a couple of guys in person. It was awesome to see a couple of my off-season boys in person too, because they're way more fucking 3D and massive than I expected. So a few shout outs to those boys. You know, it was awesome, man. Not one single client was a disappointment. And I don't say that to be mean. It was just everyone, like, I just genuinely was like, every time I saw someone, fucking hell, you're bigger than I thought, or oof, he's leaner than I thought, or yep, you're as nice as I thought you would be. Nobody was ever like different to what I expected in a negative way, which was very fucking cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Hopefully I wasn't to them. This is the funny thing, because man, here's the other crazy thing. So we sat down, we had a team dinner on Sunday night, and there was about like 23 or 24 of us boys, and one of my clients, Dan, was like, man, I can't believe you haven't met a couple of these guys, because Dan's only been on board with me for like maybe just on 4 months. So he's met within 4 months. To him, this seems normal. And I was like, hang on a minute. I looked around and I was like, bro, there's 22, 23 people in here. I think I met 3 before this weekend. And there's guys in here that have been clients of mine for 3 years. I'm like, so you're the anomaly, not them, So, so that was pretty cool. So it was cool to meet everybody officially. And now I've officially just gone back to being a bobblehead on their screen. And for all they know, I'm AI generated. So
we'll see what it comes like next season. We'll see if you start getting the itch to go back.
Yeah, well, that one was a long time coming, man. It was like as soon as the boys did so well last year, I had massive FOMO when you were there, and also seeing you there, I had massive FOMO. So I was like, all right, next year it has to happen. And then this year was like another very successful year for Flex as a whole. Like we had 12, I think we had 12 guys competing that weekend, and then you've also got Lexi, I believe, competing in the FMG show soon, and she did one of the bikini shows as well. So like there was like a really good collection of Flex crew there, and everybody did freaking awesome, man. So.
Yeah, man. It was nice. It was nice to see everyone all together. The camaraderie between our team is pretty fucking cool, man. It hits a bit of a warm spot in the heart when you see everyone all come together like that.
It was very unique in that, like, we had the opportunity, and big shout out to Eugene Teo for offering us his gym space to get a quick little team session in and do some posing practice, and that was awesome. So there'll be some content released with that coming out. But there was like 25, 30 of us there, and Australian bodybuilding is typically a little bit like narky, and it's a little bit tall poppy. But this was very different, man. We had like elite guys all just like enjoying each other's company, training, having fun, no fucking egos. Granted, we probably have a bias of the kind of personality that come to us because of you and I as people and coaches, but it was fucking awesome to see. It was very like nice.
I'd like to think what we put out probably attracts the right energy back in, I'd hope.
Yeah, no dickheads allowed, basically.
I'll have to get a few off the team then.
No arrogant dickheads. Shane, you're out. Nah. I picked on Shane solely because I know he'll listen and he'll get a kick out of that, I'm sure. And he's going to get to try Fire yogurt for the very first time in America. Me and Cam were telling him about it. These are the exciting things about bodybuilding, because like, bro, you don't know yogurt unless you've tried Fire, all right, quick recap for those that haven't caught up with Flex. We had a post on this, but I had 7 guys competing on the weekend, which was awesome. Jai kicked it off with a second place in Classic True Novice, which was really cool. He was one of my biggest surprises, actually, this season. Not because I didn't expect what he had to have achieved, but he looked so much bigger on stage in Queensland. And even in nationals, for a young dude who was like 83 kilos, he's got a lot of frame to fill out, but man, he's going to do very, very well. And the cool thing is I remember seeing him 5 years ago when he first started competing, when he wasn't a client of mine, and thinking like, cool, man, like I saw him always just even train. He trained fucking hard. I was like, he just needs time, like he's obviously got the bug, so like just needs time. But he's really coming to his own. So mad shout out to Jai. I had Rocky come in a third in the Open Classic. Open Classic this year was fucking bananas, the quality. Every division, man. The three division winners were unreal. Warren Fernandez ended up taking out the under 80s, which was really fucking cool for me to see.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have even had the chance to compete against Bobby Randall again, who beat him in New South Wales, because I think he would have pipped him. I personally think he pipped him at New South Wales. Bobby's an absolute nugget. He's like heaps of muscle, but I think Waz's like overall package was a bit better. But Waz has been going, man, since I don't even know. I remember seeing him compete probably like 10 years ago against Aaron Blighties when he was still an amateur. And it's just been a long time coming to like really nail the look. And this look on the weekend was absolutely unreal. So that was cool. Jake took second again in the novice bodybuilding to your big man, Big Frank, Little Frank, Big Little Frank. So that was a repeat of Queensland's. They both went 1-2 there. Jason took fourth in under 90s. Nick came across from Perth and took fifth in under 90s. Stacked lineup too, absolutely bananas. And then we had Big Mike Pearson come out and get some redemption from New South Wales, taking first in the supers over a very good Chris Abella, man. Chris Abella's class. So that was a very good win.
I could have gone to bed a lot sooner than I did that night, but I wanted to see Pearson on that stage, dude. I wanted to see him get that win.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming.
It was a really fun experience to watch too, because Pearson's actually like a big introvert, and I mean literally he's a big introvert. But when it comes to stage presence, man, he just puts on a show, and fuck, it was fun to watch.
I had to message him after watching him on that stage, man. It was an absolute pleasure to watch bodybuilding and be like, I couldn't take my eye off the screen when he was on stage. He played into the crowd so well, man. And it didn't come across. Some people when they do it, it kind of comes across with a bit of like a negative connotation on the back end of it, where it kind of comes as arrogance. But it didn't for him. It was very like neutral, but just like, yeah, it was very positive. Yeah, it didn't come across in any way negative. It was really, really good to watch. Yeah,
he's like a big character. So big character in a movie or in an animation. So, it was plenty of fun to watch. So well done, Paul.
When actually no, maybe not. I guess the opposites do typically come to fruition. But he's done filming stuff, hasn't he? For a show or a movie.
Yeah, he played a security guard in a show recently that was about John Ibrahim for the Cross in Sydney. I think Mike is very good at knowing when to put it on. It's not fake, but he enjoys that sort of, I suppose, like character development, and he enjoys the challenge, and he enjoys like being a little bit like eclectic with his personality. All of those things are true, but in a big social setting, repeatedly, he's the person that's for sure going to get tired at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. It's a catch-22.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, our day was pretty damn crazy at Nationals, man. I had 5 people on the day. We had Shane, I was so happy to see Shane come back through, man. He's got an interesting prep flow to him. He's someone who has to dig incredibly hard and kind of just get really flat, running flat for longer than you typically would with most people to see the conditional movements. And obviously at times from a psychological perspective as an athlete, that can be quite hard. Seeing yourself, you start to worry if you're fading, start to worry if, are you going to be able to dig out the hole you're in? Fortunately, he did put his faith in me at the peak, and we did manage to bring him back to life. But yeah, seeing him claw back that second place, and he took him Masters at QLD, show to Nationals, then beating the guy that beat him and taking the Aussie Masters Championship. That was a nice one to see, man. He needed that. We were talking about this potentially being the like sayonara season. Things have changed a little bit. He's getting a bit excited again, but we'll see what the off-season says. His opinion might change again. But seeing as this might have been the retirement season, this would be a pretty epic way to hang up the trunk for him.
Yeah. Shane, if you're listening, it might be worth considering listening to the podcast that Liz and I did on optimal quitting. If you haven't already. Not to suggest that you should, but it's a good one to listen to.
Before that happens, though, we've got one more. We've got the Amateur O in Vegas, which he is coming out for in a couple of less than a week now. It'll be on Wednesday next week. So yeah, it's going to be pretty epic. Following on from him, we had Little Frank, well, not so Little Frank, taking first in True Novice, and then looking pretty good in a very competitive heavy super heavies lineup. The one thing with Frank, we discussed this entire prep, was he's been prepping and competing for a long time, man. Like I think eight years now, and he's not winning class. So for him this season, our goal was take a gold medal in A class, whatever it is, and hopefully take back the solidification that he belongs with the big dudes and the mass monsters. So seeing him in state show coming second in the supers, then in the supers being somewhat comparable to the top 3 with a few more bit of mileage, it gave him a lovely bit of re-solidification mentally to his place in bodybuilding, and that he did truly belong, and it gave him a bit of motivation to keep pursuing it on. So it was all in all like a really, really good day out for him, especially with the competition that it was.
Man, he was a big surprise to me because I like Jake Keeley, my client who he competed against. Jake admittedly was 93 kilos, right, from under 100. So he's a light 100, but Jake is class. And man, Frank Frank was fucking big, dude. Like, he really surprised me. Like, I know he's not small because I've seen him in video, but even next to someone who I think is hyper muscular in Jake, because Jake's like maybe 174 to 175 centimeters tall. So to be 94 kilos on stage, he's not a small human, right? Like, quick side note, man, you know, Jake started that prep at 97.5 kilos and he got on stage at 93.5 kilos. Anyway,
Shit.
yeah, don't ask me. But Frank was big, man. Like, he didn't make Jake look small, but he made Jake look nowhere near as muscular as what I thought he was on a stage, you know? So, like, props to fucking Frank, mate. He definitely belongs with the big boys, that's for sure.
It's just that we're just going to work on working around his knee injuries, building up his legs in the off season. That's the next step for us, is just trying to troubleshoot the logistics of making it happen. We'll be able to do it. We just got to figure out the nuts and bolts of how to get around the injuries. A little bit cautious. It's weird when I say that. He's cautious with his leg training. When you see the weights he's moving, like stupid 10, like 8 and 10 plates on a hack, 300 kg deadlifts. But that's him being somewhat cautious in his push. There's a reason he's a big dude, man. But no, we another good. Well, I say this was a bit more of my surprise peak and prep in and of itself. Ben Adams, you've worked with him before, Dean. You know he can be a bit of a tough cookie to crack. He's just one of them that can do it all. He can put all the pieces together, but his body just takes a lot longer to get the fat off. And he's someone who typically has to suffer. We've spoken about why that would be. You know, 3 back-to-back seasons of prep with not much time to enjoy some of the metabolic positivity of an off season and surplus. But no, we managed to make weight, which is the first time he made weight in the last 3 seasons, I think, and managed to take some good silverware, man. It was a bit of a definitely was holding a lot of fatigue coming into nationals after the first show. So that definitely was a slight difference on peak. But seeing him come second in his class was an epic turnaround of events for him. And I know it did. He's one of those that is always striving for the best. So it wasn't ecstatic, but he took away from it a lot of positivity and a lot of lessons learned, and it has given him motivation for us to drive into the off season, knowing our direction of where he needs to go and solidify bodybuilding or classic. We know he's a bodybuilder, man.
Yeah,
you didn't already.
Bodybuilding it is. He looked at home on the bodybuilding stage, and he also wore some pretty fucking awesome trunks.
Yeah,
he had some rainbow swells, man. Like they were very cool.
Yeah, at the end threw Liz off. She didn't recognize him. She's like, "Wait, is that Ben? That's not Ben. Is it Bentley?"
Yeah, no, that was very cool.
And Big Jarvis in men's physique. This was a good prep. This was a very, very good prep. It was a hard prep for him. A lot of personal adversity, a lot of struggles during that. Honestly, I've seen prep competitors pull from prep through either or any of those situations in the past. And I think he was just another kind of, he was one of those preps that showed me again, it does come down to the determination of the athlete as to what they can get through during a prep. If they really do want it that bad enough and they put it on the pedestal and value its worth that much, you can move mountains to get to the end result. And Jarvis was just a kind of re-solidification for that for me. Definitely changes the way you look at other athletes with conversations. I'll say that much. Yeah, a couple of tweaks for him that we need to work on in his off season, cooling them nerves off when it comes to stage presence, posing and things like that, but all very minor things to work on. The meat and potatoes is there. And seeing him get a couple of good places in the IFBB after so long away from stage was fantastic. So he took 3rd in his novice class in men's physique. Last on the day was Matthew Clappier in a very competitive heavyweights class where he looked like he was top 5. I haven't looked in the placings yet, but he was looking like top 5. His nationals look was slightly more fluid retentive than his state show. We didn't quite get the detail in on that one with the slight tweak and approach of his diuresis that we thought was the right play to make. It just slightly went a bit too far and then was quite hard to try and regain back. We pulled it back a little bit, but just slightly a little bit worse than his state show, in my opinion, which again, good data taken, though, good lessons learned on how we need to tweak him. But yeah, very good to see the final net package. And again, Matt was another one who was very grateful to see where he stood again. I think this season's nationals and this season's competitive classes in any of the shows have been an extremely good standard, even for Aussie compared to the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Matty's a quality bodybuilder, and for sure got a lot of like potential in his future. There's no doubt about it. And he was up against guys that were just class. Like the under 100s man was a really interesting one. I mean, to be fair, he was in a class that had the eventual overall winner in Ebby. And Ebby was probably just the best combination of all the things that you consider for bodybuilding. Like he was full enough, he was lean enough, he was balanced enough. It was just a really nice, solid package. And you know, so if you're ever in a class of the overall winner who can beat a super the size of Mike and the quality of Mike, then you know you're up against some absolute belters. And then I mean, like he also was up against Ariel, and Ariel is a seasoned competitor. Like he's been around the traps. He's beaten me. He's beaten everyone pretty much. You know, like I was joking with Ariel, trying to tell him, like, you know, I'm not going to call out any help for you because I want our guys to beat you for me. But anyway, turns out I ended up doing that because he's just one of the good guys in the industry, Ariel. So
Too right, man. He's got a wacky physique as well. When he come out on stage in the state show, Matt comes second to him in the state show, and it was nice to see them two battle it out. But you can see the quality of that mature, long time in bodybuilding on his physique.
It's just dense and nasty up top. Like Ariel's a really interesting bodybuilder to watch because he's very hard not to look at. And I don't mean this in any kind of offensive way, but there's nothing about his physique where you go like, whoa, that specifically is like really good. But then there's just an inability to not look at him. Like, because he has so much density and he presents pretty well. And he's always like lean. Yeah, man, it was cool. But that whole under 100s was, you know what? I think Ebby almost got close to posing himself out of that. And it was probably like a reminder of like how important presentation is, because Ariel almost posed himself into it. It was a really interesting comparison. They worked him over very, very well. So, yeah.
What did you think of the QLD venue and specifically the stage?
Well, I'll preface this with some things that I've heard, just so that I know, just so people. I've heard that for one, the stage was supposed to have a black rubber mat on it. That was missed. So that's a venue issue. I've also heard that the lighting prior to the day was set up in a manner that was better for bodybuilding. But when the lights were turned off, that they had basically gone back to baseline, whatever they were set up for. So I know that Nayflex and Brownie worked their asses off the morning of the show to try and just get the best that they possibly could. But the lighting was just unfortunately way off. It was positioned inappropriately. It was dark. Everyone was in shadows. That show lended itself to rewarding individuals with great shape and less condition, because condition was unable to be seen.
Especially on the lower.
I mean, the venue to sit in was quite nice. The backdrop was very nice. It was from an outdoor to like backstage, like when they're trying to like bring people through. I think that was all pretty good. Just the actual stage itself and the lighting was, man, it wasn't good.
Yeah, I've not been in there in flesh. I didn't know much about the lighting, but just seeing that white floor. The minute I saw the white floor, I was just thinking that the reflection of the lights anyway, no matter where they're positioned, it's going to be hard to see anything. And the guy that won the supers against Frank, I'd seen pictures on the day backstage. His legs were diced, but when he was on stage, it was just blurred. Couldn't see anything. It could have been the live stream quality for all I knew, but it looked very odd, very hard to see that one.
And Liam too was in good shape, and it did him no justice. But then there were people that were probably in not as good a shape who maybe even got found out a little bit at nationals, because under those lighting, their shape was very good, but their condition was off a little bit. But it wasn't seen in Queensland, so it's a really interesting one. I think, like, as a venue, if they can sort out the lighting and the stage, it's a cool venue. But if it was that repeated, I'd be a little disappointed.
Well, like you said, though, it's the venue issue, though, really, not IFBB, not Oz IFBB. The venue that kind of messed up there.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things where even now, like you said, lessons learned, right? Like, hopefully they just have, all right, so next year, if we're going to come back and pay this, these are the things we need. We need better spotlights, because there was only really, from what I could see, there was two, and they were from the outside pointing inward. So there were dead spots on the stage, and then there were bright spots on the stage. And then the line where everyone stood was too far forward so that everybody was a shadow. So there's plenty of things that they could fix that would make it significantly better. So it can only get better, I guess.
A couple of athletes that I would have probably expected to see get comparisoned into the middle a bit more, but because they were on the outside of the stage, just didn't even look like it was showing them at all. Like, you couldn't really see them in any way. So I was thinking, I know that's pretty good. I would have expected in my head, forecasting the placings, they would be compared to top three at least.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, this happens everywhere, man. That happened to actually Cam in Texas. The Texas setup was fucking awesome, but there was just this one spot, two spots from center to the left on the stage that for some reason just showed dead lighting, and no one had shine there. And I thought it was the case, and then I knew for sure because Cam got compared to the guy who came third on the right side of the stage. They were both quite shiny and looked good. And then Cam got moved to the left side of the stage, and he was just inside Cam's left arm. He was shiny still, and Cam was matte. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it happens everywhere, man, unfortunately.
Yeah, just one of them things.
But I mean, outside of that being surprising, like we had a couple of little things I thought would be cool to talk about today, like surprising judging decisions. And I couldn't come up with any, man, to be honest. Like for the Nationals and even at Queensland's, I would hand on my heart say that every decision that was made, I was pretty content with, including the ones that went against my guys. Because so like props to, I mean, I don't even know if we have any judges that listen to this, but if they do, like it was fucking good, man. It was consistent. It was predictable. They worked people well. They did some really cool things too. Like in the supers, they brought out everyone together, the 7 of them, and then they put them all back on the line. And then instead of bringing out the first, they actually brought out the second call out 4, so they could just do an instant like comparison of the top 3. That was very fucking cool. They moved people around. They made people work for it. It was the judging was the best that I've seen in Oz ever. So that was pretty fucking cool. I'd be interested to know if it was similar for the girls side of things, because definitely from a guys, and like I said, I'm okay with every decision that was made that day. So
I think I can't really comment aggressively on all of the categories for female. The one that I had an athlete in is probably, in my opinion, one of the most sporadic in judging bikini. So bikini, whenever I see bikini, I couldn't tell you a year where I've ever seen consistent looks from first, second, third, and show to show those placings. You know, there's usually always an idea of a look they're going for, but it doesn't ever seem to in bikini. It always very much changes. And of course, you have to go on who's in front of you, right? So you have to play second or third, whoever's there. If they don't match in the look, then it is what it is. But it doesn't seem to be as consistent with bikini. And it's one that is always changing. So I wouldn't use that to dictate my opinion of the judging. There was, I mean, my personal opinion with Lexi, I saw her placing a little bit higher in most. I didn't see her winning her classes because she's a very, you know, she's a lot less developed than some of the other girls. She's still young in her competitive timeline. She does need more tissue on her frame in the right places. She has a bit too much of a balance on the lower body for bikini. But when you actually compare the current Miss Olympia in bikini, Maureen has a slightly more balanced physique than the older Miss Olympias for bikini. And that, in my opinion, when I was prepping Lexi, was what I was playing into. And when you look at the comparison of what should dictate the field for the following season after the Miss O winner, I thought it would have been rewarded a bit more, but that again is just personal bias taken into consideration, in my opinion, right? I try and look at it objectively. She did place third though at a state show, and in with the girl who took the overall that day. Yeah, I won't use that to decide on the female judging because again, bikini's very hard to get right.
No, but I also wonder, like she's pretty fucking lean.
Dude,
so, she's yeah,
it was
yeah. So
FMG.
I wonder though too, without as much pop, I didn't see her on Queensland Day because I was running back and forth, but it may be one of those things too, like I said before, where condition doesn't get lended to as much of a sort of a positive a look on stage under darkness than what it would if someone was just a little bit more bubbly but off, especially in bikini, which is so important about shape, right? Like if the other girl had more pop, it wasn't quite as conditioned. Be interesting to know, how did that girl go in the nationals? Do you know?
Sorry,
how did the girl go on the nationals that end up winning the Queenslands against Lexi?
She didn't. I didn't think she did amazing.
Okay.
From
yeah.
The two girls on the day that won at nationals were the two people that the two people that contended for the card were the two people that I very much expected them to. Shout out to Florence. She is fantastic. Yeah, in every.
Yeah, cool. Well, on the note of the lighting not being so great, was there anything that you think that you like nailed in this particular preps with your guys, or even something you think you could have done better?
I think this season was probably more, again, a re-solidification for me, not to try and squeeze that last few percentage in some cases. It's very rare that I do. It's very, very rare that I do. I'd like to think last few seasons of competitors very much taught me that most of the time you're not going to get that 1% you want. But on the odd occasion here or there, I would try and play little cards to just try and squeeze it out. And most of the time, doesn't really make a huge difference. And in some cases, like with Matt, like I said, we tried to push that diuresis a little bit harder this time, and it just slightly went off on the look. So I think, you know, it wasn't far away, just a little lesson there learned on that one. Things that I think went incredibly well, I think more so from in the background, from a coaching perspective, handling athletes' emotions for me. I think that's something, as more skin in the game comes, I'm getting much better at being able to handle the life stuff that goes alongside bodybuilding. Find bodybuilding management of problems and issues, fatigue and everything else is quite easy to do when you kind of understand the cogs that turn. But the personal stuff and understanding this is so different person to person. So I think, you know, more time spent with my guys and girls, I'm starting to really get a grasp for who they are internally and how they click and how they work. So it's allowing for me to better coach them. I think that's something for all of the preps, I think would be my application to understanding them as people, has made their preps all run through a lot smoother.
Is there any, is that probably what you would have said then you've learned the most in this contest prep as a coach?
Yeah.
Because my notes, funnily enough, were the importance of individual personality requirements.
Yeah, there we go, on the same wavelength.
You know, some need a cuddle, some need reassurance, some need a little hype. And one of the common threads that were spoken about within coaching, because people are having, you know, like funny stories and recounts of things that I've said to clients over the years, which I've told them to start accumulating, by the way, because some of the shit that I think I've said, that they've said that I've said, like, oh, oops, I mean, that was probably a bit harsh, or, you know, it wasn't like, they were like, you know, they were happy about it, but was like that there was a common thread of like the calming or soothing voice that I have in moments where people are otherwise normally a little bit like, you know. So I have a couple of guys that are like quite hype and they find that calming nature quite good. But then I have other guys that just need the pat on the back that are like, you know what, I felt like you actually were really paying attention, because I was, you know, but like that sort of personality variability is like really, really important. I think that is actually, you know what, man, this is even something I spoke to Eugene a little bit about when we were talking about fat loss. We were talking about behavior change and all sorts of stuff. It's a super cool podcast that'll come out, but it was about what separates, I think, great coaches from potentially great coaches is the ability to manage the person, because the X's and O's aren't that difficult, man. Like you said, like they're just not. It's about managing.
It could be applied differently, but the cogs that are turning are typically all the same cogs.
Yeah. Or how do you have somebody like actually apply the intended methodology? You know, like
Yeah.
it's one and the same. Like all of our clients got calorie deficits in prep.
Yeah.
But how is different, and even how you communicate about them is very different. So it was something I learned and confirmed. Yeah, just the importance of really like trying to figure out each individual so that I could speak to them most appropriately. You know. What about? Is there anything you could have done better?
I'd say more application wise for me in the background for my setup and how I work, just figuring out, just getting better with time zones. Because there's at the end of this comp season window for me, and it is important back to coaching, not just about me, but it's important back to my ability to do the job I need to do. Coming out the back of comp season, I'm usually flogged. Like I'm usually at that point where I'm cooked, and this is starting to suffer a little bit, and doesn't ever seep into work. But I'm trying to get better at how I manage the different time zone adjustments. But you know, I've tried different ways over the years. I shifted over into Aussie time zone for about 2 weeks just to see if I could just go all night mode. That was terrible. Don't recommend. Tried the alarm setup. That doesn't work. Not very well for me anyway, because I need to let the brain defrost. So just working on the logistics in the background of how I can apply the coaching process better during those timeframes of stress and better managing myself, because that would obviously apply back into the athlete.
Yeah, scheduling is super important in our job, especially when you start to have fucking multiple people in different countries. You know, because sometimes like when I'm all in on Australian guys, I'm like, yep, cool. I know exactly what I'm doing each day. Like I work a little in the morning, I work a little bit at night. You know, it's not too bad. But then all of a sudden I'll have someone like Joe drop in and be like, oh, yep, cool. He's actually in Rory. Oh, hang on a minute. They're competing in fucking European time now. All of a sudden I've got to speak to them like on a day-to-day basis. It's a bit different, you know, but that's all fun. Man, I think like, I definitely think I could have brought Big Mike in bigger for New South Wales. But as in like, I think he could have actually been heavier and slightly more muscular. The lesson learned there for me is like, you know, just making sure that even like checking quality pictures and like a full selection of photos is probably a smart idea, because, you know, I let Mike get away with probably sending me like, you know, 6 out of 8 poses or something like that. So there's a couple of poses we should have tweaked before I got to New South Wales, but it was a bit too late. So that's, you know, not wavering on my expectations there. And yeah, I think like in person, Mike was actually an interesting one, and he looked a lot leaner under stage lights than he does in person. So he didn't probably need to be pushed as far as what we pushed him, just trying to get that last little bit off as well, like that little 1% you mentioned. And I think that 1% probably would have cost him 2 or 3 kilos on stage, because it gets away from big guys at that very quickly. But then
probably, they're just bigger, right? So
yeah. Conversely to that, though, I actually think, man, that Nationals was pretty well nailed with him, as good as it could have been for that time and point. In that we learned quickly, and we you know, modified our approach to New South Wales, from New South Wales to Nationals, in a way that I think was conducive to getting him the result. So the redemption there was like very satisfying. That was probably one of my most satisfying wins, even more so than my pro guys that have won pro cards, because redemption was super important there, because it had been a long time coming for him. You know.
Yeah, man. Is there? I think the watching the state to national kind of transition, where you know you're going up against the same competition, taking that, clawing that space against someone who beat you, it's awesome to see. It really fucking is. It's awesome to see the coach.
Well, I think people don't realize too, it's a bit of a chess match. So actually, like the feedback for Mike was essentially, do not change a thing for Nationals. He looked awesome. It was like, he was super big, he was lean, he presented pretty well. He was up against Chris, who had slightly better shape. So it was a shape versus condition and size game, and it was like a split decision. So, you know, some of the judges were going to be there from New South Wales to Nationals. Some of them were going to be different. You don't know what the preference will be that day. The chess match knowing there was, though, is that Chris was certainly behind Mike on condition quite significantly from the posterior.
Yeah, agreed.
And I had a suspicion, and I can laugh if Timmy listens to this. I had a suspicion that Timmy's coach would try and pull hard in order to get condition closer to Mike, knowing that Mike was quite a fair bit in front of him. And I knew if they did that they probably wouldn't get as much pop back. You know, that 1% for them in condition costing quite a significant margin in shape. And they absolutely did that. At least visually, that's what it looked like. He was a little dialed up in condition in some spots, but he was certainly a lot flatter across like his top line, and some of his shots just didn't have as much roundness to it. And I was like, I reckon I can get at least another 1 or 2 kilos of fullness out of Mike, plus a little bit more detail if we shift fluid a little bit different to what we did in the first week, which we did both. And it was exactly that, man. He was heavier and more detailed. So like, he was a bigger version of what he was in New South Wales. And Chris was probably like a little bit flatter version. And I think the win there at Nationals was actually like pretty convincing. Whereas at New South Wales, it was literally like back and forth. So yeah, it was an interesting one. Mike's actually comes under the interesting or sort of unusual peak protocols too, in that like, I know this was one thing that we'd run over. He was interesting for 2 reasons. One, a lot of people not freaked out, but they were like intrigued by the carbohydrate load that he would post up and that I would post up for his peak week. because one day he had 2 meals in and he was 700 carbs down, and people were like, "What in the fuck does that even look like?" You know. And by the end of his first like big load into New South Wales, which was 2 days out, it was at 1815 carb and 9,500 calories. And like, it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like, people need, and this is the thing that blows my mind a lot about the pro divisions, the guys that are like 115 to 125 kilos on stage, and they're like, you know, oh, I don't know why I came in flat. And then you hear that they're eating 600 and 900 grams of carbs. Like relatively speaking, like if we lean on research, 15 grams of carbs per kilogram is possibly like what most people would need to like resaturate glycogen in the 90% range 24 hours later. And if you multiply Mike's weight by 15, I'll guess what the fucking number is. It's 1,800 grams of carbs. So like he wasn't far off, and some people need 2 or 3 days of that. So the numbers are crazy, but they're only crazy because he's heavy. So I think it's a lesson learned for some people to like remember that it needs to be contextually relevant to the individual, you know.
There's a picture of Mike in his off season eating dinner with a bodybuilder. And that bodybuilder is a relatively sizable dude. And anyone who is in the sport can see that that guy sat on the table is a pretty big dude. You look to the left, Mike Pearson looks like someone like AI, the Hulk, into a human-looking person with clothes. He was so much bigger than that other dude. And that was the first time I even messaged you about it. I was like, fuck, he is like humongous. It doesn't like put into context until you see the scale comparison that you realize how big he is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the off season, we for a point in time hit just under 330 pounds for people that are listening to that, 148 to 50 kilos. Like that's a lot of fucking weight on someone, you know. We are officially into Operation 130 on stage. That's the target, and I reckon we can do it by the time this time comes around next year. So let's just wait and see. He was back on diet on Monday, so it's game on.
I wouldn't expect any different.
Yeah, he was also really interesting in that man, for a dude who's like 126 kilos by the time he goes to bed, 125 kilos, he only loses like a kilo overnight, which is absolutely crazy to think that a dude of that size loses no weight overnight. One night he went to bed at 125.8 and he woke up at 125. So
Attention.
Yeah, but now here's the follow-up interesting point, George, is that when he wakes up in the morning, he pretty much matches fluid intake and food intake with the rate of pissing to the point that he stays weight neutral until the afternoon.
So is he just that in tune with the urine disposal that he can just kind of gauge what he needs to replace it with, or is he actually measuring that, tipping it down the toilet, then refilling like we would do on a flight, for example, if you wanted to kind of nail some fluid changes?
No, I don't mean just literally. He's an interesting one. Is he has very, very, very low nocturnal diuresis.
Cool.
But he pisses super frequently when he wakes. Mm-hmm. So it's like he just turns on diuresis at waking and turns off at nighttime.
Yeah.
And then for me, I was like, okay, if we can turn up nocturnal diuresis momentarily with a little nudge, then we know that when he wakes up in the morning, there's going to be a fairly significant shift in that look. And that was one of the variables that we played with just in the last week, in that last peak week. And we would get 2 or 3 kilos off him at nighttime and he'd wake up looking absolutely silly. And it was zero flatness. It was just all like extracellular fluid gone, intracellular fluid maintained, continue to load. And then coming into nationals, there was 2 days at 1850. So for New South Wales, we went 1800, 700. So 2 days out, 1 day out. Prior to that, he'd been at 1,000 grams of carbs a day anyway. So he was already like preloading for that, right? But it was 2 days out, 1850, 1 day out, 700. And then, but for the national show, it was 1,850, 1,850, both days.
Yeah, that's
and
ridiculous.
The second day was the first time he actually said to me, "I'm full." Like he was struggling to get food in. So then it was into show day then, and then by the time he got on stage that night, that afternoon, he was about 800 carb deep again. So lots of. That's
impressive midsection. That's very impressive what he did.
Yeah, to still pull it back.
Out of curiosity, was the nudge in diuresis driven via electrolyte manipulation, or was it driven by a pharmacological intervention?
Pharmacological, very light, just for 48 hours, basically. 25 megs of aldactone first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Pretty simple.
Okay.
Yeah, super easy.
I like it.
Yeah, man, he's a really interesting case in that it was so obvious to me that it was going to happen after having done the New South Wales, that it was like a confirmation of what I expected, and it was just like that's all we needed. Like again, like for a dude of that size, it's a small nudge. So
absolutely.
And pretty much fluid maintenance and electrolyte maintenance the whole time, so that we didn't have to fuck around with that.
Golden. Yeah, I often find that sometimes that is a more simple approach with less moving targets.
Yeah, like when somebody like said to me, like, "Oh, is this a problem? Like, are we going to run flat?" I'm like, think of this approach, at least in this instance specifically, as a nudge in the right direction, not trying to change directions with something that you have less control over. You know, so it's just that, like, it's going in this direction. Let's just give it a little tap. You know. I also had two other like really interesting ones, man. So Jake at Queensland's had really inflamed legs, and he had about 8 or 9 days off training, but I could feel them, man. They were like super hard. And I was like, all right, let's just let them rest and let's just see how long it takes for them to get more separated. We didn't train Jake's legs from Queensland's until nationals.
That took that long.
It was like 3 weeks. They never got worse, and they only got better. And then he did a bit of a photo shoot with Charles Lothian like 2 days out, which gave them a bit of fullness back. So I didn't have to train him that day. But that was super interesting. But then conversely, Nick, we trained his legs hard on Wednesday, 3 days out.
Yeah.
His just get better. So again, this is just, I think, a reminder to people out there that there's no one fucking protocol that suits all, you know.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. Just another feather in the cap to support potentially being able to look at things with an unorthodox mindset, that it doesn't have to be this kind of get legs out, you know, a week out from show. It has to be 1 week out. Very person dependent.
Yeah. I mean, I would never, ever normally train someone that close, but I've done it a couple of times now. Like Alex Connors is somebody that I've trained like very light legs, 2 to 3 days out, because his legs look better with a little bit of information in them. Nick was the same. They're less frequent, that's for sure. Or they're less common, I should say, probably. But certainly is possible.
Absolutely, man.
Any updates made on Blake? Do you want to give anyone an update on like where he's at now versus where he's at for the pro debut?
Probably, I guess it's the most uninteresting, but also because of that reason, interesting peak that I would have done this season. And that is because we changed sweet F all. Like the actual peak week itself, show day for him for his wins for the class win and pro win was slightly different, which I'll come into in a sec. But like the actual peaking process, there was no fat loading, there was no carb loading. It was just, you know, he was ready 4 weeks ahead of schedule. And I'll put a little bit of background on Blake. When he competed the last season, when he come out the back of comp, he has a very interesting physique that can run away from him when he's like trying to load and fill back up. And he ended up having to eat like 1,000 grams of carbs on show day last time when he competed. And a week later, twisted bowel, you know, a massive heavy electrolyte imbalance, things all went a bit west. Which meant knowing that information and him coming to me shortly after that, I dove into that quite a lot because I was thinking ahead for this. And my head was 4 weeks early, no peak, no changes, because then that limits the change on the digestion. But he just kind of got better and better and better and better. It was like he was peaking from 4 weeks prior to the comp.
Reversed in.
Literally reversed in. Like if there was ever a time for a reverse approach, that is it. It's not after comp, it's before you step on stage. And you know, this time we're actually playing with a few more variables. But yeah, coming in onto show day, I had planned in my head, looking at the like level of competition in the amateurs, that Blake's condition was already kind of ahead of the curve. And that was always the plan. We wanted to make sure that he was bringing something new to the amateur class. So we played into that further and didn't run his food too high in the morning. I personally prefer him when he's fuller because he brings out loads of gnarly detail, loads of vascularity. But the condition was too much of an easy kind of, in my head, an easy strength to not play into. It worked really well, just running his baseline meal with a slight top up before pump up. And then coming back into the pro win, we allowed for him to get 4 more meals in and kept his fluid relatively low. So on peak, I never ever touch vegetables with my athletes. I usually keep it very consistent. But for Blake, without the ability to control his midsection through anything from the sternum down, it meant the minute he has any kind of fermentation in the gut or too much fluid, just blows out. And although, like, judging criteria for those that don't know wheelchair bodybuilding, they take the injury into consideration. So with Blake being paralyzed from the sternum down from like T5 down to I think T10, he will not have the midsection necessarily judged. But in my personal opinion, it changes the silhouette of the physique on stage. So although it's not being marked, it can change how the diaphragm, chest, delts, top arm all look when he presents. So I was always in the idea that although it's not getting looked at or marked, make sure it stays as tight as possible and keeps it locked in. And it tended to work in our favor. Building him up for the pro show. And again, it was like, right, these guys have similar condition to you now. They're all on a very close playing field. It's very minor differences in a few spots, but they don't have some of the size that you do in certain areas. So let's play into that card for the pro show. Let's fill you up with a few more meals and run you in with a bit of a heavier pump up as well. And it just, Blake's one of those guys that bit of movement, bit of blood flow. I guess that's something that's slightly different for him. I'd have him training pretty routinely on peak week compared to everyone else. Doesn't really back off. He just keeps it going.
Yeah, cool. I'd be interested to know now what's happened since that show, because that was how many weeks ago now? 2?
3 weeks?
3 weeks, okay. Because I mean, he tagged Flex the other day in a side chest, and I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, it's like he's just blown up, but with zero consequence to condition. If anything, it looks better.
Well, this is the thing. We actually run him a little bit flat before we got over here. So we ran him down just to try and see if, because again, Olympia qualified, all the athletes are bringing their condition to a pretty consistent standard. I just, looking at where we are, the fatigue we had to play, it seemed like too good of an opportunity not to squeeze a bit more progress out in that time frame. So we did, lost his rear delt, lost the detail in his back, running flat, didn't look as good. But the trade-off now when you see his shots is that he looks twice as big now. He's full again because he's way more conditioned. The inability to contract all of the midsection stuff means that the development isn't really there, but irrelevant of size, you get that much body fat off, you're going to see something. And now he's getting oblique coming in, detailing his oblique and stuff, which, Tyler Mann, you saw him at the pro qualifier and the pro win. He's there on the judging panel again at the Olympia. They're going to see that. They're going to see that improvement. They're going to see his midsection that wasn't really there. With the look.
It's a comment that I hate to hear, but it is absolutely one that they say all the time, and that is like, we've seen improvement. I actually think to side shoot this very quickly, people are like, discussing whether or not they think Samson competing in France was good, bad, or indifferent. I think it's advantageous for him to have competed there, to have been good enough, but not so good that he blew them away. So that then when he now shows up to Olympia, they'll automatically go, oh, he's even better than he was 2 weeks ago. And then he gets the opportunity to be looked at again. Even though they should only look at him for today at the Olympia, that's just not what they seem to do. Because even in Tyler's recaps, he says it all the time, like, he improved a lot from that show. Like, yes, that's just a comment to state it, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't caught your attention. And it actually even happened with Cam too. He said to Cam when he went from Tampa to Texas and we pushed a little bit more fullness, he was like, this was better, this was better, this was better. And it was like that caught his attention, was the shift, so it's going to be like that for Blake. Super fucking exciting. He looks mad, absolutely mad.
Yeah, I guess it's human behavior, right? Although we're meant to be unemotionally, unbiasedly just looking at or the judges, sorry, not me, but looking at the judges on the day, what's there. You can't help but subconsciously be drawn to a physique that you recognize. If it's made an impression on your head, so you're going to naturally be drawn to it, man, and you're always going to look for it. So, yeah, I think it's smart. I think it's like tactical coaching, right? It's tactical periodization of where you want to play that to try and them last 1% that aren't really going to make much of a difference to the athlete's look per se by trying to play the card like that. But from a psychological perspective, definitely weighs into the total conversation, of course.
Yeah, because the flip of it is, let's just say Samson showed up on the weekend like a career best, unbelievable, like, whoa, and now he has to match that. And if he matches it, he's only as good as they remember. If he's slightly off, he's now regressed. It's like, this is a bad fucking decision, man. So, it's the same as like, if you smile at a judge versus stand up there looking like you're angry and upset. Like, no one's looking at the person who's angry and upset, so it is all part of the game. So very, very cool, man. Super successful season. Lots of placings. Everybody did very well. So, congratulations, George, mate.
Last side note on Blake is that when he won the pro show, he beat a top 4 Olympian from the prior season. So
no pressure.
None whatsoever. It's just another show, man. We're doing the same thing again.
Yeah, man. Like, why not? This is the beautiful thing about this, man, is like, it's already beyond expectation. So the more you can just fucking embrace it, the better off it is, right?
I will say this.
Are they doing the wheelchair in the expo?
So it's where they do the classic prejudging, 2-on-2 prejudging in bikini. Wherever that prejudging is where we'll be doing prejudging and then finals after.
Perfect. So it's on the expo.
Yeah.
Amazing, because expo tickets are infinite, whereas the old fucking Olympia tickets sold out many months ago, right? Like,
perks to be with a wheelchair athlete, because I need to be with him to help him with stuff and everything else.
So you also get backstage too.
I'm backstage with him. Yeah,
mate. Normally, you only get that if you're the royalty of coaching. This
is what I said, because like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Because I was like, there's gonna be like honey rambo, there's gonna be C-bum, there's gonna be a lot of
it's media. It's media only, is what they told us last year. Media only guys. And we're like, okay. I'm like, let's just see if Harney's on the media team. Oh, he is. What a surprise.
We got Nay Flex. She's obviously coming out to shoot the Olympia, but she's staying nearby. She's going to come through and grab some shots and stuff for me and Blake. We've got a lovely little squad of everyone out here.
Yeah, nice. Are you near the venue? Where is the venue at? Is it Old Strip or New Strip?
It is at the exhibition center. And it's about 15 minutes away from where I'm staying. That's about as much as I can.
All right, location. Cool. Fair enough.
And we've not really left or gone anywhere. Went to Flex Gym, check that out. Got a mad compliment on my beard, which I've made it in life now. But yeah, apart from that, dude, it's just bodybuilding as usual. I've not met someone with his mindset, man. Like when people say to me about the kind of neurotic behavior you should have to try and be the best, there's a reason they all have it. You have to obsessed and you have to live kind of like that if you want to have every chance of success in doing that big goal.
This is Blake, you mean, or Flex?
Blake, man, cool. Just living with him here, seeing how his mindset is. There's not a single moment of the day it's not bodybuilding, not a single second part.
Yeah, I mean, it shows, dude. He's come a long fucking way and he's killing it. So let's cross all of our toes and fingers as we should. Not even, mate. I don't cross them. People put in the work, they get the results. You know.
Right.
What's your quick top 5 Olympia predictions?
Dude, I will probably say the first spot is the one I'm most confused with. So in no particular order: Samson, Derek, Huddy, Andrew, because of the comparison to Samson. I'm going to forget someone. I'm going to throw Nick in the mix just because I love a mass monster.
Yeah.
It's a personal bias, that last one.
Yeah, I don't know who I have for 5th, to be honest. It's not Nick because I have a personal bias against his physique.
Against me, I know.
I don't think Andrew will beat Samson yet because I just don't think he has as much roundness. And I mean, I honestly think it'll pretty much just go 1, 2, 3, same as last year. I don't see anyone beating Derek. He looks massive and he will be peeled. If anyone could slip, you know, who could slip unusually, it could be Hardy.
I thought Hardy. I was asked this the other day, and I don't know. Maybe this is just because I love the story of it, but like, I think Hardy. I personally still think last year. I know Derek looks like a cartoon, but like condition-wise, Hardy was just so much better. That detail in his muscle just looks so much better.
Yeah, especially from the front. This is the problem, right? Is that Derek is more detailed from the rear. Hardy's more detailed from the front. Hardy's more detailed than anyone from the front. But like, having seen Andrew at Texas at 300 pounds, he looked like an absolute cartoon. But he didn't also stand next to anybody of similar stature, so I'm not sure how that will compare. And he has like a very, I suppose, like edgy physique compared to Campen. Is quite Samson is quite bubbly, so that'll be an interesting comparison. But I don't know who will be 5th.
Andrew, I don't know where he'd place in that top 5, but if he continues with his trajectory that he does from show to show, which always seems to be absurd, every time he steps out, you kind of go, oh yeah, there's a lot of improvements there, man. You've done quite a lot, whether it's condition, whether it's detail in the look of the muscle belly, with its actual size. Like he always seems to make that next step forward. So because of that, I think he might be a bit of a wild card and he might surprise people.
Yeah,
I'd like to. I've seen him and Samson in the flesh, and both of them are fucking ginormous.
Yeah, they're aliens, man. I don't want this to be the case because I actually really like Hardy. I think he's mad, but I'm going to say it'll go Derek, Samson, Andrew, Hardy.
Derek, Samson, Andrew, Hardy.
And then I'm not sure about 5th. I honestly have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised if they reward Nick. I wouldn't be impressed by it. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Hunter's in the mix there. I actually think the wild card to shift up the most is probably Martin Fitzwater. If he comes in like 5 or 10% sharper than what he did at Detroit, that's a pretty fucking cool physique, man.
I've seen some funny, I think they're wrong, but I've seen some funny comparisons to Phil.
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
I'm like, dude, not bubbly. No discredit to mine. His physique is insane. It's super bubbly. He's got wacky ratios. It looks really cool, but like, not Phil.
No, it's not. No, not even. There's nothing like him at all. Like really. Like, sorry.
Maybe the tan.
Yeah. Don't know, does he have nice teeth or something? Because Phil had pretty good teeth.
That's what I thought. I said so many times. I can't really see it.
Yeah, no, the level of detail between each muscle belly for Phil was so crisp that there's no one that's like even similar to that right now. So yeah. Be less shit tip. Anything?
My be less shit tip is going to be one I think I've said probably around the competing peak week conversation before, and that is your focus should not be to try and land in a position where you need this heroic peak. You don't need to be trying to move all these fucking 1,000,001 different variables. The ideal, or to coin the horrible word in the industry, which is optimal position any athlete should be aiming for, is to be ready a week out, so that you just need to just keep it consistent the whole way through. The less you move, the better, more predictable. If you can nail that look every day, it doesn't matter, as long as it looks consistent across the whole day, you're set to have a very good day out on show day. Don't move as many variables as you think, and don't think you have to peak. Peaking is just the final week of show. It's not like this structured protocol we have to follow. Yeah.
I think you've just reiterated my comment before of nudge things in the right direction. Don't try and bulldoze them. That's the easiest thing to do. Something worth sharing, mate. I have one today because it is relevant to my time that I've just spent going from Oz to Australia and then Australia back to Spain. And that is a supplement from a client of yours, Mr. Jarvis, Lifted Nutrition. I believe that is the name of it. And he gave me a product called Sedate. It's a sleep formula. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been sleeping like a fucking absolute trooper, having returned back to Spain here the last few nights. It's the first time I've actually not woken to an alarm for the last 2 nights. I was just like, I don't have anything that's super time sensitive. So I've just gone 4 caps of Sedate, off to bed I go. I've woken up at the right time, but I've woken up like deep sleep. It was awesome. So mad props to that. And if anybody's looking for a really good sleep formula, I recommend it.
I will.
Code Dean10. No, not really. I don't have one, but you know,
I'll be glad if you gave me one and not me.
But yes, George, I also thought it would be a pertinent time to bring it up because I know that you and Jarvis have spoken about formula. So
The one I was going to say is the lifted nutrition regenerate. We don't, again, so there was a little joke there between Dean and me there about the affiliation thing, but at Flex, we're not affiliated to any companies or any brands, and there's a reason for that, because we like to give completely unbiased opinions of what we think good products are, and based on, you know, the ingredients, the dosaging, quality control, etc. We don't have any kind of you've got to promote this supplement. So his regenerate formula, and I don't just say this because he's my client, his regenerate formula typically covers all of the bases to incredibly well dosed ingredients for bodybuilding, covering antioxidative stress management, internal micronutrient intake. So as a bodybuilder who's trying to find an all-in-one supplement that is simple, efficient, and easy to kind of cover those metrics of health, that is definitely an incredibly good place to start for a very well-priced panel.
Yeah. You know, all of his stuff's good. I even tasted his EAA product, which I think is pretty new. It was tasty, man. You know, as you talk about this, like no biased opinion, no biased sort of recommendations is true. But that was another thing that was actually really fucking cool to see. And even Mike said it himself. We had that session at Eugene's, and like, oh, shit, you know what, man, there must have been about 7 guys like pull out a tub of pump juice. Yeah. And everyone was just like, hey, Mike, I like this one. He was like, oh, cool. Thanks, bro. And then the next one, he's just like, this whole gym is just flooded with pump juice. This is the best thing ever. And it's because, again, like, man, it's a fucking mad formula, and he's done a really good job on it. So, and I don't even recommend it to people. It's just it's been like this sort of like self-find from all of our clients, which is awesome. So,
but I can't account the amount of mine that again, but completely naturally, they either use pump juice with Jarvis's Stim Pre, and they usually end up mixing them half and half.
Well, I know Jarvis does this quite a lot himself too, right?
Yeah, maybe he recommended it to him. I don't know, but yeah, it's so cool to see, man. I think our team is fantastic. See how connected they all are. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's nice to see the lot.
Absolutely, that was one of the biggest things about being there. It was just very like even Shane said to me at the gym, he's like, dude, you've got to be pretty fucking happy about this, like, because that gym session got turned around in like 24 to 48 hours. It was like Eugene offered me a spot to train. I asked if I could bring some clients, and I asked if I could bring them all. And he was like, bro, bring them all, you know. And it was just super, like, you know, so many people are like good at saying they'll do something and then they never show up, you know, like, hey, you want to come over mine for a barbecue? 20 people say yes, 5 arrive. But this was like 25 said they'd come, 25 arrived. Yeah. You know, even Benny, who had water loaded that morning, the poor bastard, he's just like, man, I just need to get off my feet, you know. He showed up just to even just get a few rounds in, just to be a part of the team. So it was fucking cool. Last but not least, George, before we both cry, would you rather?
Here we go.
I thought of this immediately because you told me about the flexing. Would you rather live the remainder of the year without a beard, or with a pink mohawk for the next 12 months?
So if I keep my beard, I have the pink mohawk, or I can just go bald for 12 months and nothing.
Or you can get rid of the beard. I said for the rest of the year, which is pretty nice, because it means you only got to have a bald face for the next 2 months. But I know that you got complimented on having a great beard by the one and only Flex Lewis. So, like, can you really cut that off after you've just been complimented?
Dude, I'm weird as it is with dress sense and everything else. So I'm taking the pink mohawk. I reckon I can rock it. And if I can't, actually deal with it.
I wrote it and went, George, you look good with the pink mohawk.
I'd find a way to put it. I'd message Mike Pearson and I'd be like, right, dude, send me some inspiration from your wardrobe. I'm rocking a pink mohawk. I need you to dress me up.
You'd need a yellow flannel. That's what you need. You know, some torn sort of like 3 cut off like jean shorts or something like that. And then paint your nails black and you're good to go.
Absolutely done.
Basically, the earrings. Yeah, basically you are Mike Pearson.
Oh, man, I wish I was that big.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always. I'll leave you, get back to Blake. I know you got training today, so I'm going to be watching with a lot of anticipation for this one. I'm really looking forward to see it come to full fruition. So, mad props to you and Blake.
No, I appreciate it, dude. It's been a pleasure as always, man. Enjoy it in Madrid. But
I will, except for the fact that I'm in Valencia. I'll enjoy that too. Thanks, everyone.
Peace.